AM Best has released an updated draft criteria on innovation. With us to discuss the criteria draft is Steve Irwin, Managing Director of Credit Rating Criteria Research and Analytics at AM Best. And Steve, the criteria was released earlier this year in March and went through a comment period. What's happening right now?
So John, thanks for the opportunity to talk about the update to the innovation criteria. Before we get started, certainly want to thank everyone who participated in the initial comment period and offered valuable insight through the comments that we received. I think one thing we certainly learned through this journey and process is that it reinforces our opinion that innovation is certainly important to the industry, and that's something that was shared with us through the comment period. So what's happening now is we're having a second comment period for the scoring and assessing innovation criteria draft. We're also accompanying that simultaneously releasing an update to best credit rating methodology. And then finally, we're also issuing a best commentary, which will talk about some of the changes that are occurring within both the scoring and assessing innovation criteria, as well as the best credit rating methodology. So both of these documents will be out for comment until October 31st, 2019.
Either as a result of those comments or other reasons, what are the major updates to the draft?
So John, let's talk about the things that aren't changing first, then we'll talk about some of the things that are changing. So if you look at some of the core components of the criteria that are not changing, that includes the definition of criteria. We certainly received input from commenters talking about their own definition of innovation, but we feel our definition of innovation is appropriate in terms of focusing on while technology plays a non-trivial role, innovation itself is not just about technology. We also looked at the formula for innovation, which continues to be the same. It's the sum of the innovation inputs as well as the sum of the innovation output scores. And finally, the subcomponents of innovation are also not changing. So the input components of leadership, culture, resources, and process and structure remain the same, as well as outputs, which are results and the level of transformation. So those things remain consistent. What is changing is that we indicated in our initial draft that we were publishing the innovation scores, and we're not publishing the innovation scores at the time of the release, so that is certainly a change. We also looked at the innovation assessment descriptors, which in the first draft of the criteria were non-innovator, reactor, adopter, innovator, and innovation leader, and a move away from that perspective and look to an assessment of the innovation abilities. So those assessment descriptors will now be minimal, moderate, significant, prominent, and leader. We also look to try to find some points of clarification which we could go through in the criteria. So an example of that is that within the actual culture sub-assessment, we don't expect companies to actually change their mission statement to explicitly include innovation. We also provided some clarifying elements within the culture and leadership sections as well. Finally, within the best credit rating methodology, the BCRM, I indicated we'll be updating that as well. And what we're doing there is incorporating innovation as the 9th element of the business profile sub-assessment. So that joins market position, the degree of competition, distribution channels, pricing sophistication and data quality, management quality, product and geographic concentration, product risk, and the regulatory events, markets, and country risk.
Will the update impact ratings?
So I think it's important to have a distinction between the innovation score and the impact within the BCRM. All rated companies will be scored and then given an innovation ability assessment. So that's an absolute assessment of a company's level of innovativeness. As part of its building block profile, AM Best will consider whether a company's innovation efforts have had an impact on its financial strength and considers a company's innovation relative to its particular circumstances. So it really depends on the context of the company's particular circumstances and if there is going to be an impact on the rating. So we expect that if the rapid pace of innovation continues, it will serve as a leading indicator for a company's financial strength. However, at the time of the release, we are not anticipating that any ratings will be impacted.
You mentioned the end of the commenting period. What happens after that?
So as I mentioned, the comment period does close on October 31st of 2019. So we will go through the same process we went through in terms of the first comment period, which is we'll be reviewing comments that are received and see if there's a need to update the criteria to reflect any comments that were received, as well as internal as well as external. So it's the same process we go through for any new criteria that's developed. So the process is that we expect to take effect in the first half of 2020, both the updates to the BCRM as well as the scoring and assessing innovation criteria. But as always, that is comment dependent. As you mentioned, we don't plan on publishing individual company assessments. However, we are looking at a special report which will provide an industry level review of the innovation assessments. And we will continue to have dialogue with companies as we go through this process to talk about their innovation efforts.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, John.
And for AM Best TV, I'm John Weber.